Hi everyone, welcome back. You can hear us? Yes, brilliant. Hi, my name's Megan Doyle. I'm a sustainable fashion journalist, and I'm very happy to be here to discuss a very interesting topic that I think is really relevant for Future Fabrics Expo today, embedding and scaling innovation into fashion supply chains. So this year I wrote a report on this topic, looking at this issue through the lens of supplier equity for the Transformers Foundation. That report was released in January, and I got the opportunity to interview dozens and dozens of innovators, investors, manufacturers, different people in the supply chain who are all working in this space. And I can say that there were a lot of interesting challenges, interesting opportunities, and a lot of really great moments where we can kind of capture progress that's already happening and really align what the industry is doing so that we can get a bit more progress happening in this space. And that includes things like closing up gaps in knowledge, of which there are many, and also making viable business cases for everyone involved, not just brands, but also for everyone through the supply chain. So in that report, we identified a number of key stakeholder groups in this ecosystem, and that, of course, included people like the innovators, the investors, the suppliers, among many others. And on this panel today, we're lucky enough to have those stakeholders represented, who are going to tell us about the fundamental values and the qualities that they bring together for a partnership, and give us some practical advice as well on how to scale strong, transparent partnerships to get innovations over the line and to scale solutions. So today I am joined by Josh Nusenbaum from SEFF, Jana van der Bergen from Collateral, Elsa Parente from Positive Materials, and Pascal Betten from Interloop. I invite you during the discussion to submit your questions via the QR code. And yeah, let's get started. I'd like to open this up to everybody. I haven't really kind of given much context about what the partnership is that you have all been involved in together. So maybe if we can go down the line, starting with you, Josh, and you can tell us a little bit about the partnership that you've worked on together and all of your roles in that as well.
Sure. So thank you everybody for coming to listen today. I'm Josh Nusenbaum. I'm the CEO and founder of SEFF, a next-gen fiber company producing a product that we call cottonized hemp. What we've been able to do is really at SEFF create this high quality hemp fiber that can actually be really easily implemented into the existing supply chain. And that's really a lot of the challenge for innovators, is how to fit into an existing supply chain, how to really unlock that scale. And so I think our role today is to actually, as the innovator, really come up with the idea of how we can approach these amazing mill partners and also the financing to be able to put the building blocks in place so that we can take our incredible fiber that we're producing with our patented nanopulse technology, which is creating this high quality hemp fiber, but then feed it into the supply chain in a way that's actually going to work for the long term. So that was really our role in pulling this together.
I think, me up next. My name is Jana van der Bergen. I work for a venture capital fund called Collateral. We look at sustainable textile innovations across the entire supply chain, and one of these innovations we're looking at is also SEFF. We're super excited about them for a lot of the things that Josh mentioned. They've really been able to set up a supply chain, which is something that we look at before we invest. We want to see industry pool, and the two people on my left will definitely be able to show you that there is a lot of industry pool and supply chain pool. And our role is, of course, quite simple, providing financing, but also advice on how to work with brands and suppliers, as we also run a corporate innovation platform.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Quite important in this process. So I'm Elsa from Positive Materials. Really happy to be here and to support SEFF on this journey. So as Positive Materials, we are a textile company based in Portugal. We are a tier 2 on the supply chain, but in this journey we are an incubator and accelerator. So what you basically do with SEFF, we take their fiber and yarn, and we do all the validations from the knitting, dyeing and finishing. So we want to make sure that in the end of the process we have a material that is according to performance requirements, to the guidelines of the brand, so in the end can be adopted by the brands. So it's our responsibility to take from lab to scale. And I hand over to you, Pascal.
Thank you, Elsa. Nice of you all being here. I'm Pascal Betten of Interloop Europe. I'm the CEO of Interloop Europe. and part of Interloop in Pakistan, which is the world's largest hosiery denim apparel manufacturer. And that explains also my position, as Josh and also Megan already introduced. We're sort of trying to be the bridge between the innovation and the industrial production and everything in between there. So what happens, you've got an innovation, you can only create impact with this innovation if you know it is manageable, is producible, and also, let's say, commercially viable product in the end. So that's a bit our role today here.
Amazing. I'll bring it back to you, Josh. One of the biggest challenges is finding the right partners, and you've clearly found a great team here who are bringing all of these different parts, all these different stakeholders together. What do you look for in a partnership, and how do you kind of figure out who the right partner is at the right time for a solution?
Yeah, really great question. So I think as an innovator, so we're a fiber company, right? So we're talking here about downstream for us, but we also have to engage upstream as well. So we actually engage with the farmers. We have our knowledge of how to grow it so that we can then buy it and process it, so that we can guarantee that quality further down the supply chain so that it's usable in industry. So we look and work with farmers, we will work with processors, engaging with them so that they can grow that fiber. But then also when we look at further down the supply chain, and this is really from a scale perspective, having amazing partners that are on the stage today, that mentality and the openness and willingness to support from early stage conceptualization, when we're just starting out, to shelf-ready product, which we are now, that support has to come from the mills, right? So we do spinning, we do weaving or knitting, depending on what product we're making. We need that support from those mills. So what we've managed to do at SEFF, we're actually working in 8 different countries with 24 global mills, where we've standardized over 40 different yarns so far to really be able to remove that technical challenge from going from the fiber to the yarn. And we can only do that when we have amazing mill partners who have the foresight to be able to work with us and also take that risk that you yourselves are investing into that supply chain. You have to have the belief in us, so we have to do our job to make sure the technology is right, to make sure we have our supply chain, that upstream supply chain I just talked about. We have to have that in place to give the mills the confidence that they should invest in producing these amazing products so that we can then go to a brand and show them what's possible. And that's how you get real engagement. That's how we've managed to work with these 20 global brands that we're engaged with right now. So it's vital to find the right partnerships, because without the right shared intention of how you're going to scale this together, it just doesn't become possible.
Something you said there was really interesting around creating a standardized process.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that actually means in terms of ensuring that everyone has the same information, the same processes that all go into creating that partnership?
I think we're a big fan of transparency. I think transparency comes in lots of different formats, but also communication is one of the biggest ones, right? And so we have to have everything in place to be able to make sure that the mills know what they're getting every single time, right? So we've done our homework, we understand what our fiber is like, we understand how it's tested, we support the mills with all of that fiber testing before they even get it. So we have to have that transparency with the mills so that they understand that this fiber is coming every single time the same way. So for us, being able to be transparent and having that relationship really enables us to build that trust and that partnership together so that we can actually move things forward. In terms of being able to standardize, that's our technology. I've been doing this for 15 years. We're called an overnight sensation, 15 years in the making. We're finally kind of coming out of that stealth mode, but we've really taken the time to understand the raw material supply, build the supply chain at the beginning, understand the technology, the nanopause technology. We've developed it, we've patented it in 19 different countries, to understand what that quality looks like so that we can do that time and again, so that it's replicable, so that these guys can actually have the confidence to take it to the brands and know that there can be recurring orders coming from it. So we're not just doing kind of endless pilots that the brands are kind of fatigued with doing. We see it all the time. We want to create something lasting, and I think that's the way you do it, that transparency.
Interesting. I'd like to bring Elsa into this conversation. The role that brands play in the innovation landscape is a very interesting one, because they are vital, but it can be hard to know at what point you should bring them into that sort of, into these discussions. Obviously, if you bring them in too soon, there might not be anything for them to actually work with, but if you don't bring them in soon enough, you're building a solution that might not have an end product. So can you tell us a little bit about the role that brands play within this ecosystem of scaling innovation, and the different ways that an innovator and different stakeholders can actually work together with brands?
Yeah, thank you. This is the question, and I hope we get a lot of brands in the audience. So yeah, the time that we approach the brand is really critical. And the role that the brand plays is also the key. So there are two ways. If we approach the brand too early, before we have done like the technical validation, we take the risk of creating expectations that we cannot fulfill. So in the end, we need to measure the frustration from the brand side because we cannot deliver, because the technology is not ready, because there is no availability, feasibility is not yet there. So we need to manage this. So if we approach the brands too late, then we take the risk of miss the market traction, the commitments also from the brands. So according to our experience, the best timing to approach the brand is when the pilot validation is done. So we have the technical validation at pilot scale. So pilot scale can go from tens to thousands of kilos. It depends on the technologies. So for us, this is the right way. And at this moment, the brand should also onboard the project, not only as a buyers, but as a partners. So this is really important for us, and we would like to have more brands onboarded on this kind of projects because they become partners also on the final stage. So after the pilot, the technology is still, flexible to adapt to the different brands' requirements. So we like to have the brands working with us on the requirements, on the specifications, on the final products. So we can also use this validation, this pilot to scale, as a validation for the brand. So what we need in the end, the brands to commit, to give it like visibility on, it cannot be investment. It needs only to be like a visibility on, commitment, the interest for the technologies. And this will make able to us and to the innovator to scale. And scale is like the goal for all of us, for price, for succeed on the technology, on the implementation.
On that note, Elsa, can you explain to us what that commitment might look like? What sort of commitments brands can make that show a meaningful signal to everyone else that they will purchase something eventually, or that there is interest in the market for the solution?
Yes, so commitment, we see it on different ways. So I think a really efficient way is to take one of the core products from the brand and trying to replicate using a different technologies, in this case using a new fiber. So we run the process trying to replicate, so in the end we can measure the cost, we can compare the cost, we can compare the performance, we can also do prototypes with their nominated manufacturers to also assess on the final garments. So the idea is to give all the tools to the brand so they can decide and, of course, work on a forecast on trying to move from their conventional products, trying to incorporate some of these new products. So, and with this process, we can have quantities, ideas. This is what we need.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Pascal, can you tell us from a manufacturer's perspective what a strong partnership looks like to you?
I think from our perspective as a manufacturer, the key thing, and it's already mentioned earlier, is transparency, trust, shared commitment, and I think especially long-term thinking. I mean, if you do processes like this or innovations like this, you don't do this overnight, and these are long-term projects. If we would step in such an innovation only for a quick win or whatever, it doesn't work because we'll be disappointed in the end. And so we need to know that within textiles, you have different stages, you look at new technologies, you have to adjust your product if you go from an innovation product to a production. Many challenges in between, so maybe the product is not final in the beginning, but together, collectively, we have to work towards a final product. And I think this is what the commitment is in our view.
Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think it's so important. we have a lot of pressure on ourselves as innovators to be perfect, right? And I think it's important for us from a supply chain a supply chain perspective that if we're not perfect, and we don't have to be perfect all the time, to give that transparency. But I try and also look at it from the supply chain perspective as well, right? The mills are taking huge investments on developing these products. They're iterating all the time. Like you're saying, you're going from that early stage conceptualization to hopefully shelf-ready product, right? And it's
ready from the moment you start.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so getting back to the question of the brands and getting that support from the brands, I think it's vital that there's that kind of transparency from the brand as well to support the effort that goes in from a mill perspective as well as from an innovator perspective, because mills are inundated with innovators coming every single day going, oh, can you try my fiber? It's the next best thing, and so it's our job to make sure that they understand that the fiber has had the right amount of work done to be able to grow and scale. But I think that the brand support to mills to support these developments is kind of vital.
I can also add, as a manufacturer, and I'm completely aligned, so the trust, transparency for us is also quite important. So we had the opportunity to visit the farmers, so for us to have an easy understand and know the supply chain from the fiber to our facility is really important, and this is what we are also always looking for. And we are also, when we are also communicating with the brands, we are prepared with all the information that they will also need. So this collaboration, having a complete supply chain with very clear value, it's really important for us.
Right. I'm interested to understand, and this might be for everyone as well, when it comes to those sort of commitments from brands, there's a lot of talk about the role that offtake agreements play and, kind of signing some sort of a contract or some sort of a recognition that they are going to use that material. Can any of you speak to this issue around, whether an offtake agreement, whether a sort of order is necessary or important to kind of move this along?
Perhaps you can talk about it first from a finance perspective.
No, definitely. We had a session this morning and offtake agreements came out as a request from everyone again, because indeed it would help the industry massively, especially investors, because it's very difficult for us to find proof points on commercial pool, and offtakes are of course like really black and white. Yes, we are going to do this. But the reality is that brands at the moment and the industry is at a stage where nobody is really signing offtake agreements or meaningful offtake agreements, because there's also a difference between like one and the other, how much you can enforce it, for example. So we do see personally as Collateral Good that we won't demand an offtake agreement. We're trying to find these commercial commitments and proof points from somewhere else, but that really requires us having many calls, for example, with these suppliers, with brands, to understand what commitment means if it doesn't mean an offtake agreement. But yeah, financing would be way more easy, not just for us, because we venture capital, so we take risk. So I can say, oh, I don't need an offtake. But if you are a bank and you want to finance a supplier or like a new facility, for example, you need this offtake agreement. You need proof of a stable cash flow in the future. And we are not getting that at the moment without offtakes.
May I jump in? I think it's quite interesting from again an innovator perspective. We see the brands. There's a lot of pressure put on brands to sign these agreements, right? They're getting asked every single day, oh, can you please commit? Can you give us some MOUs? Can you please show to investors that you're interested in buying this product? I think what's been amazing about this supply chain that we've put together and the risk that these guys have taken in our supply chain is having that product that we've developed already to be able to go to the brand in a finished way. It's not just an idea. It's something that's tested. So we have testing data on all the performance, hence an incredible fiber from a natural performance perspective, which a lot of these brands are looking for, this natural performance. So we've got a tested fabric that's showing wonderful performance. And so being able to go to those brands makes it easier for the brands to really understand that there's an existing supply chain here that's stable, that's already taken the risk and got the belief, the technology's built. And so it's a little easier for them to make that commitment, I think, when instead of just going with a pie in the sky idea.
the proof of concept, if you
Right.
have that, and that is, I think, what you're talking about is, if you have it, you have something you can really show to the brands and retailers and say, hey, this is what we can do. The manufacturers are behind it, there's investment done, and so it becomes more alive instead of only an innovation, right? Yeah.
And also making their life easy, because the adoption of a new material, of a new technology, is not an easy decision by the brands. So offtake agreement sometimes it's not. Yeah, maybe we are making their life more difficult because, yeah, commit, especially at this moment, it's not easy. So yeah, the goal is to take him to this journey on the validation, trying to them to participate, and yeah, trying to spread within their normal production.
I think something that's really interesting that's come up is this idea of risk and who bears the risk. I think there's always this tension of who is willing to take the financial risk, who is willing to take the kind of sweat equity, for want of a better word, like who's going to do the work. That's a degree of risk as well. How do you navigate that as a group? You know, how you break that up and how you share the risk so that it's not all on one kind of stakeholder's shoulders in that sense.
I think you're the better
Starting
person
with
to
you,
give an
yes,
answer.
and
Yeah.
then-
So I think I've already touched on it. I think it's about finding, you asked the question initially, great question, about how do you select the right partners? And I said at the beginning, like, we really have tried to find the most wonderful mill partners who really are willing to take that risk and share the risk with us. Like I said, we've been doing this for a long time. We've taken a lot of risk to get here. Investors coming on board, taking risk for us to get to that next level. But a lot of the risk does come from the supply chain and helping us build to take that to the brands. So I think, again, we've come across mill partners that weren't willing to take the risk and are willing to say, go and prove it, get that demand, get that offtake from the brands, and then we'll work with you, and that's fine. We'll go back to them at the time when we're ready to do that. But we want to also say thank you and to support with the mills that are willing to share the risk with us and believe in what we're doing. Like, we don't take that for granted either.
And also,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
to give some credit to SEFF, I think it's also not every innovator or every startup that can find the right mill and make it successful, right? Like, SEFF also just really makes sense for all the properties that hemp has and how the team has been able to make use of it. And I think if we talk about de-risking, SEFF just by being SEFF is also de-risking a lot of it.
Right. Did you want to add something, Pascal?
Well, I think it's from a manufacturer. We look at from an innovation. Sorry, let's rephrase that. We look at the potential. You look at numbers. I mean, you do, but it's again, it's a bit of trust, a bit of belief in the concept itself, the partners around it, which makes us decide to to go ahead or we don't, and because our investment is mainly hours. A lot of hours and testing and spinning and everything. So there's a lot of money involved, but we do it because we believe in specifically in this concept. And but yeah, there's always a risk. We don't know. And Jos has great stories. So
Thanks for a fun
but
adventure.
it's also your gut feeling and our
Yeah.
experience, I think. And I'm not speaking about me. I think I speak
we
probably
share
about all
exactly
of
the
us.
same. Yeah. It's our innovation works, so we never know. It's always like taking the risk, sharing the risk, the investments, all the efforts that we do. And as you mentioned, Pascal, we are companies, so we have a business in our front. So what we want with this technology is to get some business in the next 1 or 2 years. And the same for Innovator. In the end of the day, we are all business companies.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
So, but for you, Elsa, specifically, like, Positive Materials has got such a great reputation for working with startups, making them, grow and scale. You get inundated all the time with innovators. Like, how do you decide? You can't do everything, right? You can't take that risk. Same with
we would
Interloop.
love to, but we need to. Yeah, on our scouting and assessment process, of course, we have like a kind of a score. So, in our framework to decide which innovators to onboard in our facilities, we have like a checklist to do this, to finalize this assessment. So it goes always directly to feasibility, to problem solving, to, of course, economics and the impact. And we have different areas. So we go from fibers, dyeing, and finishing techniques. So we try to cover all these areas. Sometimes we also combine new materials, new fibers with new dye stuffs, which becomes more challenging, but depends on the project scope. But yeah, we have this assessment, then we decide which innovators to onboard. Yeah.
I think also the criteria we use are we look at a sustainability point of view, because that is crucial in what we do. I mean, we already talked about transparency, but sustainability, what does it bring for the planet? What can we do? What can we improve? And so the actual innovation should not only be about economics, as you rightly said. It's more than that.
Yep.
And yeah, we believe in this concept.
We should have more companies like us supporting
and
the innovators.
I think the funny thing is, if you start a project like this, there's also some context in the group again, which were not there before that. So you get new, like in our case, there's also new businesses again. So it's not only this particular project, which is crucial, and we want this, but there's more to it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Did you want to add something on it? No? I think one thing that seems really pertinent, that kind of is the thread that runs through everything, is it has to be the right moment for the industry, for what they need. And I feel like that's why SEFF, and we kind of touched on this, why SEFF has been so successful. It's like there's a clear case and the industry wants it. And so it's all of these kind of magical alignment things of the right timing, the right solution, thinking of all of the different kind of pieces that have to work into that puzzle together.
Completely. I think there is a lot of that. I mean, hemp's not new. We don't say we invented hemp, we say we unlocked it. It's not a new fiber, but it's had its challenges. It's been really difficult to put it into the supply chain. So I think there's been a lot of interest. Like linen has been picked up massively over the last few years, but there's instability in price with linen. Linen has its own challenges, and hemp's a different fiber, but it's an incredible crop from an environmental perspective. It sequesters 15 tons of CO2 per hectare, so it's a hugely carbon negative crop. So it's got its own performance characteristics, but I think there is a big push from brands at the moment into this natural performance category that we're talking about. Hemp's a perfect fit because of its hollow nature and moisture wicking capabilities. So yes, it does fit into the moment, I think, as well. But I think the demand is there. I think naturals, the demand has always been there. It's just really the unlock that we've been able to achieve with our technology.
Absolutely. Jana, I'd like to bring it on to the very thorny topic of financing. So that is kind of there's so many aspects to this where it's like, this is the big challenge, but financing really is a big challenge. Can you kind of talk to us about what the gaps are in financing, particularly in the phase after accelerators and after kind of big new shiny ideas, and then there's a bit of a lull, and these innovations obviously can take decades to get to reach scale, 15 years as Josh said. What are the big challenges there? And then we'll move on to, I guess, where the opportunities are to fit it.
Yeah, and definitely acknowledging the challenges, especially for scale-ups. Like I think there's quite some venture capital funds in there that are willing to take technology risk, go early. And then there's also at a later stage more like debt financing and project financing where they need proof and they need hard proof. And these are these offtake agreements that we're talking about, or other things. But unless there is offtake agreements, nobody of a debt financer or an infrastructure fund or project financing is going to fund a first machine or a first facility. And I think this is where we really see the gap right now, which is difficult to cover. There is different ways. Asking venture capitalists to do that is just not their model. Like it's way too much capital. It's also in hardware. We don't invest. Like we invest in companies that will produce hardware, but not in the hardware itself to make a facility. So I do think there is this gap that you identified, and how we currently see it being filled, and it's also something that we ask for before we invest, is who is going to finance this? Do you have an idea of that? And luckily, there is some ways. One of them is public funding. So I would say the investors that don't just have a financial motive, but also a strategic one, they could come in here. Like, for example, public funding, government funds, they might want to build a local ecosystem. So they're willing to take a little bit more risk, less returns, because they think it will help their region. Another one is, for example, suppliers. If suppliers really believe in the technology, they might want to provide some off-balance sheet financing. And if that's not a possibility, then they could also provide a guarantee, for example, for the startup. And I think getting really creative in that middle bit, which only works if you're a really promising startup, is how we can overcome it. But at the moment, I do agree, like there is no, like project financing is for this, venture capital is for this. There is no specific financing that is definitely going to this first facility or folk that we call it. And you need to be creative around it. You need to think about it up front, because if you only start thinking about it when you get there, it's too late.
Right. What about the challenge of creating that financing and having patient capital and ensuring that you don't like run out of runway just before you've hit the moment where you scale? Because I feel like there's this kind of very apt kind of graph called the Valley of Death. It's pretty depressing. And it's like huge funding for ideas, nothing in the middle, huge funding for a solution that's actually kind of up and ready and going. And that section there is really where a lot of brands are struggling. How do we close that sort of, I don't know what the analogy is for stopping the Valley of Death.
It is that the funders that we just talked about are the ones currently that have to fund that gap. But clearly we're not moving fast enough, because still a lot of innovators, especially in the textile industry, are stalling there right now. So it is actually something that as financiers amongst each other, we're actively talking about, like how are we going to solve this? One of the solutions is also information, like the same as I will not invest in SEFF if manufacturers and brands don't tell me we want this. Like I don't need black and white offtake agreements, but I think I can understand, yes, they want this. And the same works a little bit for the different stages of financing. Like you said, you have a different financier for every step. And the problem is the further up you go, the least knowledgeable they actually are about the tech. And they find it very difficult to assess the risk around it, to understand it, to believe what is said. And I think we have a job to do, linking all amongst each other to basically carry over the data that we have and techno-economic analysis we've done, so they have more confidence. And even though it is still risky, it might seem a little bit less risky, and they might still want to move just because there is more information available.
That piece around information, education is so vital. I think in this Transformers Foundation report, really, we could have written a whole report just about the gaps in knowledge, because between all of the stakeholders, there are different areas where they don't understand each other, and they don't. Part of it is communication, lack of transparency, as we've already talked about, and part of it is just their cycles, a brand's cycle for when they need materials and how they get them into the supply chain is totally different to when an innovator can provide them sometimes. So I'd love to speak to all of you around this idea of how you educate different stakeholders. Is that something that is necessary still to kind of bring everyone on board so you're all on the same page, you all understand where you're going, and what are great ways that you're able to educate and build those knowledge kind of pieces together?
Do you want me to start? I could go on a while here.
No.
Go for it.
Education is so key. The biggest question I keep getting asked is, amazing, can I smoke my jeans? We're in hemp, and it's the biggest question that I get asked all the time. So education is key, not only in the supply chain in terms of what's possible, but also to the end consumer as well, so that the brands can feel comfortable taking it to the market. So we've addressed education in a number of ways. I think we've taken a step at SEFF to do our own life cycle assessment. So we actually measured from putting the seed into the ground all the way through growth, harvesting, processing, SEFF processing, all of the tractor fuel in the farm, and shipping the fiber to our processing facility. Everything included. We have a 74-page LCA that's been third-party reviewed as well, that we then share with mills and with brands, so that they can really understand that we've done our homework and understand the story that is there and understand that sustainability journey. I think also our job as well is to explain to the mills why they should be interested in us instead of all the 2,000 other innovators going to see them. Why is our technology differentiated? What is special about hemp as a fiber? What is special from a performance characteristic? And why do we see the demand pull from the brands? And so I actually think that has been really useful for us. created some great storytelling around our product and around our technology, and we were able to take that to the brand initially, create that brand demand from a sustainability and innovation perspective, so going straight to those departments within the brand, finding some amazing brand partners who were really willing to support because they were interested in natural performance textiles, but also the environmental aspect of using hemp. And they supported us, and they funded some of the initial product and innovation that we did, and introduced us to some mills to start that initial development. But we couldn't have done that without really giving them that understanding of the transparency from field all the way through to that finished product, so that we could touch on their pressure points that they had as a brand, so that they could go and push that up the supply chain to be able to greenlight these projects with us. So the storytelling is vital from our perspective to really push innovation forward.
I think the textile industry in general, one of the characteristics of the textile industry is that everybody keeps everything as a secret. I mean, if you do something innovative, for some reason we don't want to share because either my competitor misuses it or whatever. Yes, that might happen, and I think you probably have taken that risk as well. But if you want to grow, you have to be transparent. You have to educate. You have to inform. And from there you can connect the dots and work with partners who add value. So yeah, I would say let's open up the textile industry and let's share all the. I mean, there's so much information available, and if we share it like we're doing here, I think it will bring us to the next level.
Yeah, and sharing is caring, right? So
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So on the education is like on the risk, on the investment. So we are all sharing. So the education needs to be the same. Sharing education between all of us, with the brands and also with the consumers, because the consumer will not drive us alone. So we cannot put all the responsibility on the consumer, not only on the brand. So it needs to be an education across the value chain.
And not to forget about the investors as well.
Yes.
Like,
Exactly.
if we are not
Yes.
educated, we won't invest.
Exactly.
And I think it's us learning from all of you, but also we are a textile-specific investor, and we really need to work hard to convince non-textile focused investors that this space is investable.
Right.
And we need all your materials to get them over the line, basically.
Absolutely. I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. We've got some good ones here. I would like to... there's a few interesting questions. One quick one, Josh. Where is the hemp grown?
So we can source from a number of different countries. Right now, we're buying most of our hemp from the UK, believe it or not. So that's where we're purchasing, but we can purchase from all over Europe as well. We work directly with those farmers. We really understand that raw material, so we can go and select from multiple different countries.
Okay. All right, question. When involving brands, do you prefer to work with one brand to make it exclusive, or do you also involve multiple brands to have stronger partnerships? Would anyone like to take that? Elsa,
I
maybe?
can
Sure, with
take.
pleasure.
Yes, I can take this. So we prefer to have a brand involved on the project, but exclusivity is something that we try to avoid. Well, maybe we can consider for a certain period of time, but we don't want to limit the business for us and also for the innovator. We see sometimes this request from the brand side, being the first to market launch, having some exclusivity for a certain of time, but then we are limiting somehow the innovator. So but I think we've been managing quite well this process, and nowadays we see more collaboration on the brand side without go into this exclusivity topic.
I don't know if we've just been really lucky, but I think the brands that we're actually working with, they have that exact mindset.
Yeah.
They don't want to stifle the development. And so even the developments that we have at our booth, that you can come and check out, Beef 63.
Yeah, I forgot to mention. It's over there.
And our supply chain installation, you'll see there that we have fabrics that have been developed with these brands that everybody can come and have a look and order with those mills. They've been amazing to support us with that. So it is super interesting to be able to find the right partners. But from an innovator perspective, It's really interesting. So we work with individual brands, but then through Fashion for Good, we're part of Fashion for Good as well, and we've actually got a project running called Beyond 50 in denim, where 5 brands have come together to support a project to be able to create high percentages of hemp in denim in their supply chains, right? So we've actually brought those 5 brands together, and we're seeing it actually works really well. So yeah, there's multiple ways to do it, but and both work. You have to find the right partners.
Absolutely. I've got a few questions here for you, Josh, around, we talked about standardizing processes and communication across regions, but there's a few questions around how you standardize farmer input from farm to farm, but also across regions as well.
Yeah, really good question. So I studied at the largest textile and ag school in the UK, where I tried to learn everything there is to know about how to grow this amazing plant, not only how to grow it, but how to process it and test it. And so that gave me that kind of understanding of the raw material supply. And actually, we've created our own SOPs for the growing. And I think that's a huge part of the hemp industry. I'll keep it to hemp specific. That's been missing over time, is really for us as the processor in the middle to be able to tell the initial growers and processors of the raw material what we need, because they're just growing it and hoping that people will be able to use it, whereas actually we understand it. So we work with them, we analyze the soil, we look at the different types of seed that are available, we will work with them, we understand planting densities so that you plant it dense enough so they grow nice and fine and tall in the field. And so we work with them to look at those different varieties across different regions, and then we have standardized the decortication equipment, which is the separation of the woody part of the plant from the fiber. So we've looked at all different types of decortication technology. We found the best technology that we're partnering with now to make sure that people who want to get into hemp and grow hemp can actually, they can follow SOPs and purchase the right equipment, which is expensive equipment. And a lot of people have made mistakes thinking that they will buy this equipment to be able to do the job of supplying to us. So we've felt like we've had to step in to work with farmers and processors so that we can standardize it so that we could ultimately be able to purchase the product.
I think maybe we've got time for one last question. I think this one is going to be for Jana. It says, in the absence of offtake agreements, what do investors need to see to validate brand pull?
Good question, and I think there it really comes to relationships. If you don't know a person, and not trusting them is a big word, but you can't really trust them on their words, it's very difficult to think or to feel this commercial pull if you don't know the other person. And I think we are in a lucky position that a lot of people that work for our fund have been with the industry, so a lot of the brands and suppliers we know very well. And we know also what questions to ask for us to understand, has this reached a certain level within the brand yet? For example, if I speak with a startup and they've only ever spoken with the innovation team, no offense, but then I know it's at a certain stage. If they spoke with a product manager, if they spoke with merchandising, if sourcing has been involved, especially if it's all been approved, then I know, okay, the commitment is more serious, or the likelihood of them actually implementing this is way more serious than, oh yeah, I've spoken with brand X and they've said they would love to do a trial, we're starting with the first lab tests, and then they say they want to buy this at a large scale. That's a very different stage. And like I said, we are a VC, we take some risk, but I think the relationships and the trust and the reference calls we do, because before we invest we do reference calls with suppliers and brands who are super open with us, that really helps us with again that information that we need to make the investment.
Absolutely. I think that might be a good place to end it. I just wanted to point out, there are a lot of questions here for Josh. If you would like to go speak to him, the SEFF stand is over there, and there's a lot more information you can find over there as well. And in that Transformers Foundation report, just to flag as well, there are a number of checklists on there at the end of the report for brands, innovators, and I think investors or suppliers to kind of validate all of these questions that we're talking about around when is the right time, how do you find the right partnerships, how do you know that you've got the right partner on board. So I would really encourage everybody to go check that out. And yes, I would like to thank my panel. Thank you so much for all of your wonderful answers, and thanks everyone for joining us.